Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is specifically for self-employed creatives, whether you are somebody who is working full-time for yourself or aspires to work full-time for yourself and maybe has mixed feelings about traditional employment. Or if you struggle with the concept of being employed, I want to talk about it. I think that once you decide to pursue your dream of being an artist, of being a musician, a designer, a business owner, whatever it is, there's this holy grail that is being fully full-time employed by whatever your dream is. And I don't think there's anything wrong about aspiring to that. I do think there's something not quite healthy about pedestalizing it, because from what I've seen, lots of people who pursue these paths, even if they attain full-time employment, full-time abundant pay from the avenue, it's not always permanent. There's ups and downs in life, lots of reasons why you may have to step back or get another job. And if you see your full income as coming from your passion being the only way to consider yourself successful, I just think it sets you up for a lot of shame for when that may not always be sustainable. And this video is really me reaching back through time, grabbing myself by the shoulders and shaking some sense into myself. Because I started my business in college, and basically from that point for several years, I was entirely self-employed. And from the moment I started my business, I was fully ready to make a six-figure income and expected it to happen really quickly, in a couple of years tops. And every month when I wasn't seeing the numbers come in and I would think maybe I should get a part-time job to help with my income in the meantime, I had these feelings of shame and failure that I wasn't enough and that I wasn't good at business, which is crazy because it was very successful off the bat. It just didn't meet this unrealistic standard I had kind of randomly chosen for myself. I want to go back and tell that version of me in my very early 20s to go so much easier on myself, and also to tell her that having a job can be so good for you and offer so many good things to your life, and having an overall healthy, well-balanced life is so much more important to me now, and I wish it had been more of a priority then, than having a very healthy, very successful business. Now I see my business as one aspect of a grander, more beautiful life, whereas back then I kind of thought of my business as a reflection of myself, my self-worth, and I just sourced so much of my happiness and my self-image and how I wanted other people to see me through my business. And now I've shrunk the role of my business in my life, so there's room for other things. And now when I want to improve my life, I have a lot of different categories that I can reach into to improve, and having a beautiful, well-balanced life is a lot more important to me than holding myself to this just kind of imaginary standard that I chose just to prove something. So if you feel like you are in a similar boat or you can relate to any of that, I just want to kind of reach in and open your mind a little and expand how you think about your life, how you think about your business or your creative hustle, and how you think about employment. I'm gonna go through and talk about all the different things that I think a job like being employed can add to your life. Okay, first, and perhaps the biggest or most important for me, is stability. Having even a small amount that you can count on for income every month can do a lot to settle your nervous system, as opposed to having your income being entirely variable every single month. Some people perform better with pressure and feeling like they have to make it work or something bad will happen. And I learned through experience that I'm not one of those people. You may or may not be, and it takes time to know yourself, but I am the kind of person who does my best work when I feel safe, when I feel like I have time to relax and like I don't feel guilty for relaxing. Just having space and safety makes my creativity better, it makes my communication better, it gives me space to create new ideas. And yeah, I'm just a big fan of having at least a small amount that I know I can see coming into my bank account, regardless of how the market is or how my customers are feeling or what changes there's been to the algorithm, or even in my own capacity to work. I know that if I show up to work, I get this little amount. And I will say that spending my entire 20s with a completely unpredictable income did something to me that I think is going to take time to heal. I'm not saying it was the wrong decision. I'm really proud of myself for following my dreams so passionately, but there has been a trade-off, and I don't think I've yet even wrapped my mind around what that has done to my psyche. Okay, the next thing it can do is help you make friends. I love my online friends and I love the people that I work with online, but spending so much of my career just working online, it can be isolating, and honestly it's made me socially kind of weird. Even if you're really introverted like me, interfacing with people on a regular basis is really good for you. Okay, another huge one for me is routine and structure. I enjoyed almost complete freedom of time throughout my entire 20s. And that is such a unique gift that a lot of people will not experience in their lives, and I really cherish and appreciate it. But if I'm being completely honest with myself, I am happier, more well-adjusted, better functioning when I have structures and routine, and when I have external accountability, where like I have to be at a place at a specific time that requires me to kind of structure my day around that expectation. And like, don't get me wrong, there are times when I'm at work now when I wish I was in bed writing poetry, because I can just feel that it's a creative day. I can just feel that something good would come through me, and I can't. I have to be at work, and that is a bummer. Like, that is a trade-off, but to me, so far the trade-off has been worth it, because overall my life is healthier. And I do still find plenty of time to create. Okay, another thing a job can be is a distraction. This one's kind of related and maybe more unique, but if you have a really active imagination, if you are an overthinker, if you have ADHD, then having something else to occupy your mind for 6 to 8 hours a day can be really helpful to keep you from overthinking, from ruminating, from obsessing. Like, it can just feel like a really healthy distraction from your own obsessions. And I'm very pro-obsession. I really love how passionate I feel about my work and how often I think about it and how much I want to pour into it. And I like to work with people who feel the same. And it can be really nice to take a break from that side of your personality that can be destructive. It can be really destructive to artists. Okay, another last one, and really big one, is it takes pressure off your art. I believe in making money from your passion. That's kind of what this whole channel is about. That's how I want to live in a long-term sense. But before your art is consistently meeting your needs, putting that expectation on it, I've noticed in myself and other people I've worked with, it can be stunting to your skill development and to like the progress of that art. I do better when I'm having fun, and I get better faster when it feels like my passion is a hobby that I like just can't wait to go back to get back into when I get home, and not when I'm just like sitting at my desk staring at it, trying to squeeze a couple $100 out of it to make ends meet at the end of the month after month. If you can make ends meet with like a day job and then just use your passion for things like savings and traveling and spending on fun stuff with shopping, I think my hypothesis is, this is kind of what I'm working towards right now, that will create so much more fun and joy and gratitude when I'm actually engaging in my work, than the past couple years where I've kind of just been using that passion to scrape by. So rather than thinking of employment as something that you do because your passion is failing, I want you to kind of think of it as something that, or an option that you have that you can take advantage of if you choose to, in order to better support that passion, in order to better support the long-term vision you have for your art and for your life. I want to share some of my tips for being employed while supporting your dream, because this requires a total paradigm shift. You can't be employed like everybody else is employed. Okay, because you have a dream. And the workforce can kill dreams if you're not going in with a strong spirit and your own mindset. So the first thing I want to mention is to keep a loose grip on your job. When I got the job that I'm working at now, on paper it didn't seem like it was going to work. I'm really glad that it actually has so far. But I was telling my friend, I was like, yeah, I guess I'll take it and I'll work there for a few months just to build up my savings account, but I probably won't stay very long. My friend was mentioned I love how you view employment, because a lot of people would get a job and feel like they have to keep it, and I just don't feel that way, because I know what my main path is. And like I've said, a job for me is something to make my life better. It's not just something I do because I'm a human. When you first get a job, your intention should always be to keep it for a few months and assess if it's a good fit for you. It should overall improve your life. There can be some ways where it makes it harder, but overall when you're looking at it, it should be a net positive. And I know once you get a job, you can feel a sense of scarcity, when will I have another job offer? Can I find something better than this? But I just know that if I moved through my life that way, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I like where I am now. Okay, and when you're evaluating your job, I want you to consider absolutely everything about this job, not just the pay. Although, yes, let's consider, is the pay worth it? But I also want you to think of the atmosphere of your coworkers, the level of physical activity. Does it suit you? I really like being active, but not feeling exhausted when I get home. So there's a very specific balance I like to strike in my jobs. The consistency. Do you need a consistent schedule, or do you like more flexibility where you can say, I have a lot of work in my self-employed stuff this week, so I'm going to take a lighter workload? Or do you prefer to have these days I go to work and these days I work on my own thing? I don't know if I believe in a perfect fit, but I found that oh my gosh. I wish you could have seen that. I have Sunday on the outside of my bedroom today. And she has this automatic ball that she plays with, and it rolled under the door, and I saw her little paws reach in and grab it and pull it back. See, I locked her out so that we wouldn't have Sunday distractions today, and we still do. I'm just obsessed with her. Anyway, I found that even though I've never had a perfect fit, there's always some small trade-offs. There have been some really unexpected opportunities and jobs that suited me really well. One time I worked at this perfume shop that was more of a proof of concept. They didn't have a ton of foot traffic. It was more like a showroom kind of thing. And I was allowed to bring my laptop and work on my graphic design for my entire shift. And so I was kind of picking up almost a double paycheck for the work I was doing. Her ball's in here now. I was basically picking up a paycheck for sitting in a pretty place and working on my business. I also got to expand my knowledge of perfumery, which has always been an interest of mine, and I sold things occasionally. And the reason I want you to consider everything is because of going back to the whole theme of everything, which is that this job should improve your life. So even if you're making higher than an average pay or than what you expected, but your coworkers are mean and they get under your skin and you go home stressed and worried about the social interactions that you had, and it's affecting your ability to work on your own thing, to me that wouldn't be an overall life improvement. To me, I would find something else, which I'm gonna skip a point because it's kind of related, is don't get caught up in drama as best as you can. For some people, their retail job is their whole life. And you have to remember that this is a blip for you. This is like a footnote in your autobiography. You can't get catty, you can't get competitive, and you can't get involved in like small-minded petty shit that's gonna distract you from your purpose. I actually have such a low tolerance for conflict. I really only allow it in my closest relationships. I have a very, very strong preference for jobs where conflict is handled healthily, quickly, and honestly just doesn't come up too much. And if you feel yourself reorienting your goals and your vision toward like a management position at this company, climbing the ladder at this job just because that's what everyone around you is doing and you're like, I guess I can do that, just take a pause and ask yourself if that is going to support your larger path or not. Is it going to distract you from your purpose, or is it going to add support on that path? And then don't allow yourself to be disrespected. There's so much disrespect from management and from customers for service workers, if that's the field you're in. People tend to look down on it and think, one, that it's not valuable, which is strange because we rely on service workers for every day. And two, that if you're there, it means that's all you can do. I think if you're a really good service worker, that should be enough. Personally, I think that's a really impressive skill. But just like the hierarchy of how we run our economy, it's just people look down on it. It's the unfortunate reality. And that can cause a lot of mistreatment from management and from customers to you. And I would just invite you not to accept it. As much as there are people who will be rude and will be unkind and will look down on you, there are also people who really value service work as a skill and as an industry and even as like a field of study. And these people will treat you like an adult, and they will appreciate your labor and they'll appreciate your skill set and they'll treat you accordingly. I also recommend choosing to work with small businesses over big businesses whenever possible. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, but I think working closely with an owner of a business who's really passionate about what they're doing and is really involved in their community creates a much more rewarding work experience than being one of thousands of like a big box retail situation. The management in those big box retail situations can be so toxic. It's just not personal. They have higher turnover because they don't really care too much about your experience there. I've had kind of that mostly the opposite experience with small business owners. Now, I will say it can get messier because those people, they don't have they're not running as tight of a ship, right? And they don't have the same procedures, and they don't necessarily have a ton of experience being a boss, which is a skill that takes a lot of time to develop. But to me, I prefer the trade-offs of working with a smaller business than working with a bigger business whenever possible. And then I do want to talk about money. And I do want to say that you should be realistic about what you need to get paid. Like personally, in the state that I live in, I could not make minimum wage work. The extra expenses that I incur from being employed, like the gas from driving there and convenience meals because I have less time, those things would eat up most of my pay, and it would be an actual waste of time. And in my case, that time would be better spent at home looking for different jobs than, giving all my energy and time for a very unequal exchange. So look for jobs with tips maybe and get really good at making tips. Negotiate your starting rate because that is where you will make the biggest difference. If you can bump up what they're offering by a bit, then that's much easier than working for raises. Although also, work towards raises as much as you can. Or you can get creative with this and find jobs that have good benefits. Like if they're offering bus passes, or if you're working at a restaurant where they offer you a meal every day, that meal can go a long way in saving you money from having to buy your food. When I was working at a bread stand at the farmer's market, we were allowed to take whatever leftover bread we wanted, basically, a reasonable amount. And that bread could be traded at the farmer's market for other foods. So I would go home from the farmer's market with a bag full of fresh local produce and groceries. And I did like the pay there, but that was the real bonus. That saved me like probably close to $100 a week. And that's kind of the mindset you want to take into this job hunt, is that it's not just about going and clocking in and receiving your paycheck for whatever amount. It's really, there's a really holistic approach you can take where you're looking at everything. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but I hope you understand what I mean, that like there's millions of different kinds of jobs out there, different situations, different schedules. That's an important one too. Like, are you a morning person or an evening person? When do you want to be working, and when do you want to be working on your art? And it might take some time to find a job that suits you, but don't buy into the narrative that all employment is bad and exploitative. On like a broad political philosophical level, maybe it is all exploitative, but like in the practical sense of how you are living your life and how you are meeting your needs, there is a way to do work, even part-time work, even entry-level retail type work, that is positive and happy, on some level fulfilling, and improves your life. And I want to reiterate that there is no gold star for being or staying a full-time employed creative. Some people might think that's really cool and impressive, and that's about the end of the benefits. Rather than thinking of yourself as a full-time creative, rather than defining yourself in terms of your employment situation, find creative ways to live the life that you want to live. And with that, I need to go get ready for a client call with my mentee. We are working on his website today, and I'm really excited. And then I'll have a couple hours to kick back before I go to work. All right, love you, bye.